What up? All right, y'all, we're live. I feel like my video is being really weird. I'm not sure why. The quality is not great. Can you hear me? Can you see me? How's it look for you guys? If I can unplug and restart. Am I lagging for you? All good? All right, I'm really laggy for myself. All right, whatever. I'll deal with it. Cool. So tonight, I'm going to do a full review of periods 1 through 3. I know that we're about halfway through the school year, and you are now about halfway through the content. So I'm curious for you, when are your finals? Are they happening before break or after break? Or have you already had it? Thursday. Oh, this is perfect timing then. This week. Yes. Cool. All right, this is gonna be awesome. This is gonna be really helpful for you guys then. If I am lagging at all, or if you can't hear me, if the quality is not great, just let me know and I'll try to fix it, okay? So we're setting up a new kind of studio and getting set up and new equipment, and so it's not great right now. We're just kind of pulling it together. Yeah, the lagging is definitely, hang on. Oops. All right, I should be back in a second. There we go. Okay. All right, lagging is better, quality is worse. So we're gonna get some better equipment and be in a good spot soon. Next week, so you guys know, next week we're gonna be doing a massive Kahoot game. I'm trying to get as many students as possible to play. The Kahoot game is free, anyone can play. You don't have to be a Fiveable member to play. Every live session we do, other than some of these like special events, these are only for Fiveable members. So like you guys. So I'm gonna share my, like I said, all of your friends can play in the Kahoot game. That will be for everybody. And the Kahoot game link is just below my video. It's just fiveable.me/Kahoot/world. So that is where you can find that. And I'm really excited about that because that'll be fun for just like, right before break. All right, so before I like super jump in, I'm just curious from you guys also, just another quick question. Give me a scale of, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being I know nothing, 5 being I would kill it right now on any question. How do you feel about periods 1 through 3, right? The first half of the class, all the stuff up until 1450. You feel like I'd get a 5 if I took the test right now, if it was just on that half, or I'd get a 1. Let's say a 2, 3. Cool. So it seems like you guys are sort of in the middle, which is a good place to be, right? 2 or 3. Awesome. Okay, so I shared the slides. I've emailed the slides out. If you don't have the slides, I can give you the link. I'm going to post it in there right now so you guys can follow along. There are the slides. Even got a little like branded short link, which is kind of fun. Okay, so where'd my slides go? All right, so we're gonna go through periods 1, 2, and 3. Definitely post your questions as you have them. This is a lot different than like usual for me because it's a lot more like really like we're gonna kind of simplify things. We're not doing this for all the details. We're doing this for like big picture, right? I want you to come away and feel like, all right, I get it. I know it's a big chunk of time, but I know how to approach it and I feel better about this time period. I want you to see like big ideas. So at the same time, like post your questions, like this is what I'm here for. I'm here to help you guys. So whatever questions you have, post them in the ask a question box, use the chat however you want. I won't always look at the chat. So if you have a question specifically, make sure you put it in ask a question so I can go through and answer those, throughout. And cool. So we'll be here for about an hour, maybe less. But, it's usually around then and I'll cut through all of this. You've got the slides. You've got the video. We should be ready to go. I would definitely recommend taking notes on this for some of you guys that are like, I have a test on Thursday. This is some good stuff in here, right? So, don't feel like you have to write down every single thing I talk about, but write down things that you want to make sure to like go back and look at. That's a good way to do this. Like keep yourself a running list of like terms or people, places, events that you're like, okay, I know she talked about blank. I kind of know what it is, but I need some more time. So that would be a really good way for you to do this. Also, for those of you that have tests coming up on YouTube, I have review videos for every key concept. So I'm going to go through, it's 9 of them tonight. So that's 9 videos that are on YouTube that are going to be useful for you, that are not quite like crash course. They're a little bit more, they're just really specific for AP World. So if you're being tested on any of that content, it's going to be in those videos and not too much. All right, my friends, let's get going. So period 1, always remember that period 1 is 5% of the exam. It's literally going to come up as like one set of multiple choice questions. Then it like could be part of short answer or LEQ, but it won't be focused on that, right? So you're not going to get an entire essay question of any type completely focused on period 1. It could be part of it. So you could have, anyone else's audio dead or just Javier? You could have, oh no, try refreshing. So you could have a short answer question that's like part A, it's going to ask you about something before 600 BCE. Oh, there's a typo there. But you're not going to get a question that's like fully about that. It's just not going to happen. So, keep that in mind as you're studying period 1. Don't get caught up in the like massive amount of details about like Egypt and Mesopotamia and all those other things. It's too much. Just focus on the big picture ideas. This is what will help you for multiple choice, and to just like attach this to, changes and continuities beyond that, for example. All right, so 3 key concepts in time period 1. The first is all about early humans and migration. Essentially, you have this out of Africa theory. Humans begin in Africa and then migrate out of that, right? So they migrate to the rest of the world. I don't know if I have the map in here, but it takes them quite a few thousands of years to actually populate the whole world. But they're coming from, southeastern Africa, and that's the like hearth of humans. And so from there, they move along. And they're migrating mostly because of like climate and resources. So, as climates changed, they needed to move to find new food, new water sources. That's why you have migrations, especially in the early time. The earliest people, in this like Paleolithic era, they were foragers, right? So they're hunter-gatherers. Their societies were egalitarian, so they were all equal. It wasn't like a hierarchy. They lived in these small kinship groups, which is just like a family unit. So they don't have these like complicated like societies. They're living in small groups because they're moving in small groups, right? You can't sustain a lot of people if have to go and find your food. And then they don't have private wealth, so like we don't understand a world without private wealth. I have things and these things are mine. This is my phone. You have your phone. It's private wealth. For them, it's all connected. There isn't such thing as private wealth. It's ours. And that just has a lot to do with the like, survival aspect of foragers. And then finally, the other key thing to know about these early humans is their use of fire. So fire is one of the most important developments for early humans because of increasing our brain size like over time. That like food that we're now cooking on the fire is more nutritious, and that is going to lead to more sophisticated language. Also, being around a fire, we're talking to each other. So we're actually like developing a history. So humans using fire is like one of the most important human innovations that ever existed. All right, 1.1, done. What is this? This is like a double slide. Here we go. All right. 1.2, this is going into the Neolithic Revolution. So the Neolithic Revolution is that like point right there is also one of the most, if not the most important like turning point for humans. This is when we get agriculture. Agriculture changes everything about our life, our society, our politics, everything. So this is why we talk about like, was this good for humans or not? Obviously, you know, we have so much because of it, but we also have a lot of like detriments because of it. And so essentially you have, you know, we start to domesticate plants and animals, which means that the population can increase because we have more food. And with that, it also means that not everybody has to be a forager. You know, I don't have to go worry about my food because there's going to be enough of it. I can spend my time, you know, creating pottery or, you know, learning some other like religion or other different parts of life. I don't have to focus on foraging. So specialization of labor is a game changer. Then, because of those things, you also start to get a stratification of society. So, you know, in foraging lifestyles, it's nice and equal, and I don't have to worry about someone else being more powerful or like have more opportunity than me. But with specialization of labor, with private wealth, now you have the haves and the have-nots, right? You have people who are lower classes, people who are higher classes. And so, you know, is that inherently bad? Yeah. I mean, you have people now on the bottom, right? And I mean, of course, there are other ways to like organize society, but this is a inherent part of our society as long as there is private wealth. That's the key. So as humans start to produce more stuff, their populations are increasing and they're starting to settle in these cities. So Catalhayek is the first city. I know there's some debates around like what is the first city. This is what is commonly referred to as the first city. So this is why this is in here. And you know, the thing about all the early settlements is that they came about at all different times. It wasn't like there was like a key like window where they all popped up. They're the way that they are popping up is in relation to migrations, right? So they come about first where humans are earliest, right? In Africa, in the Middle East, up into, you know, Asia, and then they'll come about more like way later in like the Americas because they migrate to the Americas later. So they come about at all different times, but they span the world. Civilizations appear everywhere. It's kind of remarkable at how humans around the world have developed in very similar ways, even though they didn't even know each other existed, right? Like some of these early civilizations in the Americas and then early civilizations in like Africa, like they didn't know that other people existed. They come about it at different times and they are very, very far apart. We live in a globalized world now, but it wasn't always like that. And so it's pretty remarkable that you do have, you know, like, oh, you know what? I bet. Hang on one second. So Dylan, make sure that you're logged in not as Fiveable because it's going to break this. Just come back in as you. Okay. All right. So the last thing about them is that they all appear near rivers and water sources. You know, you've got Egypt on the Nile, you've got Mesopotamia on the Tigris and Euphrates, you've got the Shang dynasty on the Yellow River. They're all coming about near rivers and water sources because they need those for agriculture. They don't have, although they do irrigate the water so that they can move it where they need, they don't have like, you know, very sophisticated irrigation techniques in order to, you know, bring water further than like where it is at the river source. So, all right. So 1.2 is really just about the Neolithic Revolution, about the rise of agriculture, how our society gets more complex, how it, we have more resources, and that's a good thing because we have more people, we have more ideas and more innovation, specialization of labor. We just really we innovate a lot because of that. But it's also not a good thing because of social stratification, because of our impact on the environment, right? Like if agriculture itself, we're manipulating the environment, and so that's not going to leave good things. We end up overusing resources. Also, because of this population increase, because we're living in close quarters, you have more disease that's going to spread. So there's a lot of pieces that are also not great, right? Like conflict, like some of these massive conflicts that happen probably wouldn't have happened without without civilization like this. All right, 1.3. So 1.3 gets into the actual early societies, right? Those are your Egypt, Mesopotamia, Shang, Indus River Valley. So instead of trying to desperately memorize every single thing about them, because seriously, don't. It's really ends up being kind of a waste of time for this. I would recommend instead this list of characteristics. Just know how they're similar so that you can compare them. Okay, so all of these early societies are large, they're powerful, they have cities, and they're bureaucracies. So, again, what is a bureaucracy? A bureaucracy is this where you have these different departments in charge of different parts of the civilization. You've got, education, you've got finances, you've got war. You just like we have a cabinet. You have everything split up. And so it really helps to run big civilizations. That would be, those are the big important characteristics of, that's the first thing, right? Then you've got agricultural surplus. So it's not just foragers, right? Now we're producing agriculture. We have more food than we need. That's true for all of them. So because of that, they start to specialize in different things, right? I don't have to be a forager. I can do something else. And so all these civilizations become very wealthy because of that. I mean, at least some people become wealthy, and then you do have the society itself is wealthy. All of them build monumental architecture. Usually they're either for defense or religious purposes. But essentially they're power structures, right? If I build this massive monument, I'm kind of flaunting how powerful I am, right? How do you build a massive monument? You need money, you need people, you need influence, and then you can build. And so it kind of can scare away your enemies. So you've got things like the ziggurats, the pyramids, and then just defensive walls that pop up. All of them do that. All of them have some form of writing. So in Egypt, you have hieroglyphics. In Mesopotamia, you have cuneiform. Quipu is the North American or South America. It's the one in the Americas where it's sort of in knots. And then all of those different forms of writing are going to lead to legal codes, right? You've got laws. Before these societies, you don't have law system. You don't have legal codes like that. It's not as rigid because people are in small groups. But now that there's big cities, big civilizations, now you have laws. So the writing itself first comes about because of accounting, just keeping track of who paid their taxes. But eventually it sort of forms into these laws that really can define what is allowed, what's not allowed, and what happens to you if you do something that you weren't supposed to do. All of the leaders in these early civilizations use some form of divine right to rule. This basically means either they position themselves as a god who is ruling, or chosen by the gods who are ruling, right? There's very much a connection between religion and politics in this time period. And then they all are competing about resources. So even though some of them don't know each other exists, others very much do and are in competition for for resources, for civilizations, right? Some have more than others. The Hittites are an example of having a supply of iron that other people wanted. So you have this competition between them. I'm trying to see how many, oh man, okay. All right, and then finally, because you have innovation happening, you have new weapons forming. So conflict is going to get even uglier, right? So, you know, with the invention of, or the innovation of bronze, weapons themselves get stronger, and so conflict gets bloodier. So a couple of pictures. These are the Olmec heads. As for some reference, this is like 8 feet tall, I think. So, you know, imagine where you are on that. And this would be a ziggurat. This is in Mesopotamia with that kind of flat top. It's a temple. So this was done for religious purposes. All right, we done with period 1. All right, let me check the questions. What questions do you guys have on period 1? Let's see. Will they ask about social stratification in specific regions? So if you know how the different societies are, what the different classes are called, then you have, trying to see. Okay, then you have evidence points, but they're not going to straight up ask you like, what was the high class called in Mesopotamia? Like, that's not going to happen. Instead, it's more about understanding just like the bigger pieces of this, but it's not going to, you know, they're not going to ask you like specific questions like that. Those are all going to be used as evidence points for you. Comment button isn't working. Yeah, I'm not sure. Can I rewatch this to review my test later too? Yes. So this exact, where you are watching this will become the replay. So you can rewatch this replay and any replay that I've done already. Okay. All right, y'all. Does that include the mandate of heaven, or was that later? Mandate of heaven, yes, it does include it, right? So that's a perfect example of that divine right to rule, where you have, actually, let me just post this as a question and then answer this question. So divine right to rule does include mandate of heaven. That starts at the Shang dynasty. Yeah, so actually, no, it starts right after the Shang dynasty, because Shang is sort of first. So then you have the Zhao dynasty, or the Zhou dynasty, and that one is the first one to say like, nope, we're supposed to be the one in charge. So mandate of heaven is like that perfect example of using divine right to rule. All right, let's get into period 2. Ready for this? All right, give me an emoji of how you're feeling right now about period 2. Or even better, give me an emoji that describes period 2. Yeah. Any emoji. Yikes. All right, here we go. Money. That's a good one. All right, period 2. So the best thing about period 2 is that the key concepts are organized really well. I mean, it's pretty much religion, then what's after religion? I think it goes religion, politics, trade. So if you can, like, if you want to sum up period 2, it's religion, just like Viviana's emoji, right, with the church. It's religion, it's politics and how these different societies are organized, and then it's trade. Okay, so those are the 3 main things for time period 2. Okay, so in terms of religion, and again, if you need more about each of these religions, head to the review that I did a couple weeks ago. I went through all of the major world religions and just hit on like exactly what you need to know about each one. So Judaism and Hinduism, they form in Unit 1, but they develop further in Unit 2. So these two come up as, you know, examples. Hinduism, obviously with the caste system, will affect the social stratification of India. So super important to just know kind of the basics around these religions. But you know, you don't need to go like super far in depth about the like tenets of each one, but like if you can just remember Hinduism, caste system, reincarnation, like I'm super simplifying. Okay. So trust me, I would love to take an entire class on just Hinduism. I think it's an absolutely fascinating religion, especially, with any of these, but I'm going to really simplify them just to kind of make it a little easier. So those are kind of the like key things to remember about Hinduism. In period 2, these are the new religions that come about. So you've got Buddhism. Buddhism is forming in India. It's to like simplify it, it's really about ending suffering by ending desires. So if you are focused not on like material desires and rather on like a spiritual like enlightenment, then we can end human suffering. And Buddhism spreads in India thanks to Ashoka, who adopts Buddhism, puts up those rock and pillar edicts, and really spreads the the ideas of Buddhism through India, and then they'll spread into China mostly in time period 3. Taoism is in China. Taoism is your yin yang, right? It's this balance, this harmony with nature. If you read any document that is from a like Chinese scholar and it talks about harmony with nature, there's anything about if it's some sort of like religious document and it's talking about nature, it's Taoism. That's how you can connect it as quickly as possible. So Taoism, think nature. Confucianism is much more about education, relationships, this like patriarchal relationships, right? These ancestral like family honor. These are the like key words to think of. So if you read something that you need to define, Confucianism from it, then those are your key words for that. And it is very much a definitive. It's very definitive of Chinese history throughout. Christianity is kind of like Judaism 2.0, except that Christians believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Jews don't regard him as a son of God. They believe that he was a person that existed, but he was not he's not, the Messiah. Whereas Christians believe that he was the Messiah, he's arrived, he's here. So Christianity spreads starting in Rome, spreads throughout Europe and the Middle East, and then throughout the world through trade and through missionaries. A couple other like key, not religions, but philosophies to know. The Greco-Roman philosophy. This is, my computer is hot. The Greco-Roman philosophy is basically all about reason and logic. You've got Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. In that order, each was the next teacher. So Socrates taught Plato, Plato taught Aristotle. And a lot of it is about like questioning, understanding, nature and society and laws and human behavior, but doing so through logic. So it's not really like a divine power. It's more about understanding the like logic of things. Animism, we see this much more outside of the core civilization. So Native Americans, more like indigenous tribes throughout the world, where there's this focus on spirits within the natural world, right? Everything is interconnected. It's not one high spirit, it's spirits within all of us. Okay, and then the last one, ancestor veneration. So this is where you worship your ancestors. It's seen a lot in some of the Chinese philosophies. Where else is ancestor veneration seen? I have to think about it. But basically, this is your religions and culture in a nutshell. Okay, so the ways that you're asked about religions on the exam have a lot to do with the spread of religion. Like that's the key thing to know. So it's more related to like trade than anything else. The other thing is about politics and religion. How each of these classical civilizations really used religion to govern, right? As just like those early civilizations did, in a way that was you know, I'm in power because, whatever God this society believes in put me in power, or I'm in power because I am the God, right? So both are different variations of it, but this is kind of how we see it. And now we can see the like remnants of that through architecture. All right, states and empires. So with period two, it just feels like this like, series of empires, and in a lot of ways it kind of is. So to kind of like hit on the big keywords throughout, I'm just realizing this has an error. Alex the Great. Oh, I guess, well, he like conquered them. So keywords, key topics to know from each. Persia, just a little like, this is a weird observation that I've made before. Persia is literally almost never on the test. I don't know why. I can't tell you that it will never be. I have no idea. But I haven't seen very many questions ever about Persia. I mean, I haven't seen all the exams, obviously. I haven't seen all the multiple choice tests. Those aren't released. But of all the essay prompts that have ever been released, Persia is very minimally on there. Of all the practice tests that have ever been released, Persia is really minimal. So, yeah, exactly, right? I was going to say, if you're going to skip anything, skip Persia. I wouldn't skip Rome and Egypt. I mean, look, Persia's fascinating and not worth skipping in world history, but on AP World, it's not that much. So I think you can use it as evidence, as an example, but it's not going to be on the exam in a really specific way. In China, in the classical era, you've got the Qin and the Han dynasty. These are, the two classical dynasties. The Qin dynasty only lasts for 14 years. They are very heavily influenced by legalism, so like really using laws to these like to really like base your beliefs in a legal system. They're the ones that centralize China. Before them, you don't have a unified China. You really have, for a long time, after the Shang and Zhao dynasty, you have kind of decentralization chaos. The Qin dynasty unifies them and then is quickly replaced by the Han dynasty, who stay in power for over 400 years, really set up the Silk Roads on the eastern side, and are massively powerful, are innovating a lot. Chang'an is their city, their capital city. Paper is an important innovation that they have. So, that's China is, you're going to see the Han Dynasty, especially on the exam somewhere. There'll be some question that includes the Han Dynasty, most likely in multiple choice question, or let's see. You're going to see a question on the Han Dynasty. It could even be part of an essay prompt. In India, so kind of moving over from China and India, you've got the Maurya and the Guptas. The Mauryan dynasty, this is where Ashoka is. This is, spread of Buddhism, rock and pillar edicts. The Mauryan dynasty is much bigger than the Gupta dynasty. The Gupta, though, are sort of like the golden age of India. It's a very peaceful time, and so you have a lot of innovation in science and technology. There's just a bunch of different inventions that come about then, like what is it? I think like the number 0 is developed by the Guptas. Yeah, Guptas are pretty dope. Potentially pi. I can't even. Sometimes I get confused by the different innovations in the different places. So don't feel like you're the only one if you're like, I don't remember who did what. I think with Gupta, you've got, just remember that this is the like golden age, in Greece, yeah, I can see your comments. Okay. So yeah, I'm just getting like, yeah, I can see your comments. I'm personally getting backtracked or like getting sidetracked because of I sometimes look at the comments and sometimes I've got my like slides open, but I kind of get like all over the place. So I'm trying to like stay focused. So anyways, so Greece, to be honest, is another. If I was gonna, if I was gonna skip one, I'd skip Persia. If I'm gonna skip two, I'd skip Greece, which is crazy for living in the Western world to think that. But it is what it is. On the exam, it's not gonna be that all that much. The big things about Greece, that word is oftentimes used that has anything to do with. So Greece was democracy, right? A direct democracy. So it wasn't like a representational democracy like we have. It was also, there's lots of conflict going on in between. And also, just to be clear, yes, they're a democracy, but no, not everybody had the right to vote or to really do anything for that matter. Just, men with land who were citizens. Okay, Rome. There are actually three parts to Rome. There's the kingdom, that's the earliest time period of Rome. That part is also almost never tested. Then you got the republic. The republic is where Caesar is. He's at the very end of the republic. The republic is also almost never tested. What you're really talking about when we talk about Rome is the Roman Empire. So don't throw in Julius Caesar because he is almost never part of it. He's before the time period of when you really focus on in AP World, which is the Roman Empire. That starts with Augustus. Another important emperor to know is Constantine. He's the one who legalizes Christianity or makes it the official language or religion. And that's in 313. That's the Edict of Milan. So Roman Empire. The Mesoamerican societies, there are several in this time period. Teotihuacan, which is in Mexico. The Maya, each one, it's kind of funny that I have like the locations of two and then just like an innovation of the other. But each are very similar in kind of how they're designed, how they're set up. Both, all of them have lots of different innovations that come about that are very influential to like other Mesoamerican societies. Another practice you see is like human sacrifice, bloodletting. Okay, so oh, that's so cool that you've been to Teotihuacan. I would love to go. I mean, like, there's some amazing examples of monumental architecture in these regions that are just so incredible to see in person. So, to really simplify things, why do empires rise? These are your list of answers for the reasons of the rise of empires. You've got bureaucracies that allow for complex societies to exist, right? If I don't have a really powerful way to run my society, I'm not going to be able to keep it all together. You have to have that like complicated system. You've got to have laws. So, for example, in Rome, you've got the 12 tables or Justinian's Code. In China, an example of their bureaucracy is the civil service exam, right? They have these like complicated mechanisms to support the society, like laws, like bureaucracy. You've got roads. You've got to have like physical connections to the whole empire. So all of these empires do rely on roads. Rome has the Roman roads. Persia has got the royal roads. It helps keep these things connected. You've got strong militaries to keep them defended and to expand. Yes, Justinian's Code is post-classical, but it's like right at the end of. Actually, I think it's even in the 500s. But it's an example of why empires rise. And then even just like having slavery, it gives you this lower class that can produce all of these goods, right? Can build monumental architecture. So that's a big piece of it. Why do empires fall? Well, in some cases, the environment is damaged. In other cases, you've got invasions or revolts happening on the inside, and disease, right? So you've got spread of disease. And just like different, corruption is a big piece of it too. And all of these empires kind of go through, it's like, 10 reasons why empires fall. They all hit some combination of those 10. And what's really scary is that, I'm going to be honest, like, I'm not making any sort of conspiracy theory here. I have no idea what will happen to the United States. But if you look at that top 10 list, there are a lot that we have sort of hit. And so just, I don't know, it's kind of interesting not to think of ourselves as invincible. We're part of the same human history that these people were. People in Rome were no different than us. They just lived 2,000 years before us. So they experienced things before us in a different way. We just have more technology, right? That's kind of all that makes us different. So I think that's just what's important. All right, let's cut through trade, and then I'm going to head into some questions. Do I have? Okay. So this map is designed by Benjamin Freeman at Freemanpedia. He's got so many awesome maps like this. And so, it's really important that you know the 4 major trade networks, which are in the red, Silk Roads, which are not just roads and they're not just silk, but that's what they're called. In the purple, you've got the Indian Ocean Network. In the yellow is the Trans-Saharan Trade Network. And then the blue and the green are both part of the Mediterranean. I'm not sure why they're in different colors here. So those are your 4 major trade networks. They really start in the classical era, then they expand in the post-classical era. So that's it, they're the ones to know, and they're going to take you through the whole course, really. We don't really rely on the Silk Roads anymore, but that's just because our transportation is better. So we don't need to take, camels to distribute things. We still do, but we also rely on, boats and trains and planes. All right, things to know. So, like I said, those are your 3. They're referred to as the silk, sea, and sand routes. So some of the new technology that comes about, I'm going to just kind of put up this whole thing. No. Okay. And automobiles, yes. We obviously, trucks and all kinds of things. So things to know about trade. New technology. You've got yokes that are literally the like saddles that or not the saddles, but like the bars that tie animals together. All right, so instead of taking 1 ox to bring my stuff, I can put 2 together, take even more. You've got saddles to actually put on the horse or on the ox. Riding it will make it a lot easier, and on the camel. Stirrups are like where you put your feet on the side of a horse. All of these things just make transportation better, right? See a pattern, right? Better at transportation, which means that we can trade more, faster, and safer. All of those things are good. Some of the things that are traded, you've got rice and cotton are being traded across the world. The different irrigation technologies, such as the Qanat system, that is Persian, goes to Asia. And so just the whole irrigation system gets better, which means more food, which means more people, more ideas, more conflict, right? So just remember that pattern. Disease is also spreading. Smallpox will spread across the world. There's a bunch of different plagues that hit all around Afro-Eurasia because of the spread of disease on these Silk Roads and within the Indian Ocean. And then finally, religion is what spreads. That's the big item. Christianity is spreading to Europe. Buddhism is spreading to East and Southeast Asia, and Hinduism is spreading to Southeast Asia. So you've got a lot of movement of, ideas and of people around the world. So I got a couple pictures for you. This is a stupa, which is, like a Hindu temple found in India. These are aqueducts. Aqueducts are sort of irrigation systems that Rome used. You can still see these all across Europe, which just shows the extent to which Rome influenced Europe. The terracotta warriors. I like how it's just like, oh, this like this. He seems more overt than the rest of them. Look at how many there are, though. It's crazy. The Great Wall starts being built in the Classical era. It will finish being built in the post-Classical era. I've never been to the Great Wall, but like, look at how massive it is. Here are all the little people. All right, period 2. Check. Love that kid. Okay, questions. Do you have any recommendations with how to do the 50-minute time limit? Okay, I'll do skill stuff. I'll come back to that at the end. Let's see. You said that Persia doesn't show up on the test. Is there anything else like this that won't pop up? Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that like all of the early civilizations, for example, are, you know, you're not going to see too much about them. Usually you see one question on like Hammurabi and that's it. There will be other things too, and I'll point them out when we get to them. Okay, Abby, you're really trying to get some chemistry help here. I can't help you with that, sorry. I have no idea. I never took a chemistry class. Straight up, never did. My teacher said that AP compare the Han Dynasty with Rome. Is that true? If so, what kind of comparisons should we expect? Yes, it's true. It's true because they're in the same time period and they're just on opposite sides of Eurasia, but they're both part of the same trade network. They exist at the same time. They have similar, you know, like political structures, but they're different because of their like culture. And so what their major influences are, you know, between Christianity versus Confucianism, or, you know, before Christianity, you have like more like Greek gods influencing Rome, this like more like pagan society. So they're different in their cultures, but they're similar in their like social structures and political structures. So you'll basically be asked how, like, in different ways that you can compare them. You can compare them around, like, think about spice, you know, to help you. And yeah, comment right here, Miko, this is exactly right. With approaches to technology, that was a past essay question, or a DBQ even, and China was more accepting to new ideas, right? Pushing the boundary. Cool. All right. Okay. All right. My computer is going to die. Hang on one second. All right. Okay. Hopefully it doesn't die. Okay. So trade continued. Okay. I think my charger is coming. All right, so once again, you see the same trade routes on here. They exist in the post-classical era, just like they exist in the classical era. Okay, hang on a second, guys. I know. Okay, I'm literally like at 2%. No. All right, coming. Yeah. Thank you. Hang on, y'all. I'm like in the low power mode. All right, we good. All right. I was getting stressed out watching that go down. All right, so trade continues. This map is also really good because it shows the like key symbols that kind of shows the like spread of language, spread of innovation. There's your champa rice over there, you know, in China, spreading from Vietnam. You've got, what is this? This is like the Turkic language. This is Islam. This is, down here is the Swahili city-states. The Vikings, camels. So period 3 is really all about trade. I mean, this is like, it's no surprise that it's the first key concept in period, because that's really what it's focused on. So if you know anything about period 3, know the trade routes. I swear they ask about trade every year in the exam. I mean, I've seen it so many times. It's got to be the most asked question. Has to be. All right, let's see. Okay, so in this time period, trade is absolutely dominated by the Islamic empires, the Mongols, and the Vikings. Those are your 3 major players in trade, but everyone's involved in trade, right? So you think about trade in the post-classical era without thinking about Mansa Musa or the Tang and the Song dynasties. But these 3 are really facilitating the massive expansion of trade. New cities pop up because there's just so much trade happening right on the trade routes. You've got Timbuktu, you've got Baghdad, you have Malacca, just to name a few. You've got new luxury goods, and just like more of them, right? So spices and silk and porcelain, some of these exist before, but you have more of them being traded. Remember, to understand trade, you think about the luxury goods being traded on land and the bulk goods, which I think is the next, maybe I didn't put it on there, bulk goods being traded on water, right? So if I'm trading exotic animals, I'm not trying to, bring a herd of exotic animals with me on land. I want to put them on a boat, like if I'm trading timber, these massive like trees, I'm not trying to carry those. I'm putting them on a boat. But with spices, with silk, with gems, those are light and worth a lot. So it's a lot easier to, make your trip worth it and possible. So luxury items, land, bulk items, sea. That's a really good thing to remember, because like I said, trade is always on the exam, and I swear there's always an essay question. Again, can't guarantee anything. I have no idea what the essay questions will be this year. Maybe trade won't be on it, but it's been on it in the last several years, so don't be surprised. Know this. New technologies. So the saddles on camels got better, which means you could travel further. And then another example of new technology in transportation is the caravanserai. These are sort of your holiday inns of the Silk Roads, kind of just where people would stay on the way, right? It's kind of I should change that to your kind of like the Airbnbs of Silk Roads. Although it wasn't one person renting their place, so a little different. New navigations you've got the compass in China, the astrolabe, which is Hellenistic, but this is helping to navigate. And then of course those bigger ships, right? The dhows and the junks. So just like we said, more trade, we're getting better at it. We can go further, faster. This is all part of the same story. Also new tools for economics. You have paper money, or flying cash like credits and loans. You have different trading organizations like the Hanseatic League in Northern Europe that are similar to they're early versions of NATO, right? Or not NATO, NAFTA, right? So these trade organizations where you can trade more freely, like the European Union. So again, making trade easier. All right, I'm just going to throw up the rest of the stuff. Okay, so you've also got migrations of people. Bantu and Polynesian are the most important human migrations in this time period. Bantu is spreading throughout Africa, and today you can really see a wave of influence of where Bantus migrated from based on language. It's very connected to language and ethnicity. So you can kind of see their travels through that. And then Polynesian, of course, in the Pacific. Diasporas are a spread of people like away from their homeland. So in this time period, there are 3 major diasporas, and there are several more in history. You have Muslims in the Indian Ocean network. So, Muslims, their hearth would be in like Saudi Arabia area in the Middle East. That's like where Islam begins. But then as Muslim communities get involved in trade, a lot of times they stay there, right? So you have Muslim populations across the world that are not living where their homeland was because they've moved away, they've stayed there, they've built up, communities in other places. And then Jews out of the Mediterranean. So same thing, you have a diaspora of Jews that will really pick up later. But like today, it's because of the diaspora after World War II, where you just have Jews everywhere. And then the last thing about trade that comes up in this section are the explorers, right? So Marco Polo, Ibn Battuta, Zheng He, these are your like 3 major explorers that go out and explore and connect and write about it. And that's the most important piece, is that they document what they see. And so then when they come back, now we can read about it. You can hear about what the other societies look like, what they're doing, what they know. And then you have more competition, more, motivation to kind of keep up. You know that they're there. Is this Renaissance yet? This time period does have the Renaissance at the tail end. The Renaissance kind of goes further than isn't like stop at 1450, but it's kind of the tail end of this unit. But this key concept is not Renaissance. This is just trade. 3.2 is all about the actual politics of it. So just like you can kind of narrow down the big trading influencers to Islamic empires, Mongols, Vikings, you can also narrow down the top like political powers of this time. So Islamic caliphates, again, would have been one of the top, powerful structures. Like they exist for a very long time. So you've got the Umayyads and then the Abbasids. The Abbasids expand far further than the Umayyads do. Both are very much part of just this like massive community where there is a lot of trade happening. There's a lot of innovation happening, a lot of just like expansion. Like the Islamic caliphates expand like very quickly, right? That like big on trade, big on conquering. Why are they big on trade? Muhammad was a merchant, and so you have that like merchant influence from the beginning, and so it's very, very much like a centerpiece. And then you got the Mongols. I also remember have done review sessions for each of these things. So if any one of these different groups of empires is stressing you out right now, head back and watch one of the reviews from the last few weeks. So the Mongols don't actually exist for that long. It's like 150-ish years and 160 years. But they expand further than any other nation in the entire world, right? This is the largest land empire to ever exist. So once they sort of have expanded and conquered all the territory between China all the way to Persia, they get as far as sort of like the border to like France. Like they do conquer like Russia and Ukraine, and then they don't get into Western Europe. But they are broken down into 4 khanates, and those are run by the 4 of the grandsons of Genghis Khan after he dies. After he dies, his son takes over for him, and then his sons are sort of running the rest of the empire. They are massively focused on trade and expansion. They protect the trade routes. They are religiously tolerant. So it's basically like as they're conquering different places, they, if you are cool with the Mongols now being in charge, then you can practice whatever you want. But if you're not cool with it, they'll kill you. So that's sort of their shtick, which, what are you going to do? All right, let's see. Okay, so the Byzantines, this is Eastern Rome. So while Western Rome falls in the classical era, Eastern Rome continues. That sentence that I just said right there is a perfect sentence for a lot of CCOT questions. You know, what changes, what stays the same in post-classical Europe? Western Europe falls while Eastern Europe continues. And so in Eastern Europe, you've got Justinian, you've got Eastern Orthodox Christianity. So the schism between Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodox is in 1054, and that's a really important time, turning point, because that's this like split of a major world religion. China is three major dynasties: Sui, Tang, Song. Each are developing all kinds of new technologies. The Tang become, like, think of it this way: the Sui is to Qin as the Tang is to Han, right? So just like it's like Qin, Han, Qin is short but unifies it. Han is longer and has more innovation. It's kind of the same here. Sui is shorter but unifies it again. Tang is longer, has more innovation. And then the song continues what the Tang had done. Yes, we are the exception. All right, so I'm going to just kind of finish up with the period 3 key concepts, and then I'm going to hit the questions. I know it's 9 o'clock right now, so feel free to stick around if you want to get your questions answered. You want to get a little bit more practice in, but you can always rewatch whenever. So definitely post your questions in right now if you have them, other questions you have about periods 1 through 3, and then I'm just going to cut through the last slide so we've got all of it together. So other political structures, state building that goes on in this time period. Within the Americas, the Mayans are kind of continuing into this time period. And then you have the Aztecs and the Incas at the tail end of it. Both form in the 14th century and then fall once colonialism begins. But these are kind of your major players. Two places in the world are feudal, and then you have Japan. So oftentimes you're asked, on the actual exam, you won't be asked to compare them, but knowing that they both have similar political and economic structures is a good thing. Are the Toltecs important at all? They're not going to ask you specifics about the Toltecs. They're just another Mesoamerican society. Again, yes, important in the grand scheme of things, but on this exam, no. That's a good example of one that's kind of like Persia. Yes, they could ask it to you. It's technically in the course description, so grain of salt, but again, if you're going to skip something, that's a good one to skip. All right, so the economic productivity and consequences. So because you have so much trade happening in time period 3, there's just so much more being produced. And then, what are the causes of that? And then what are the effects? So you've got more crops. Champa rice, so someone had brought that up in the chat. Champa rice is just such a good example to remember of a product that just really, really matters for the population growth of this time period. Instead of being able to harvest one crop of rice in a year, now you could harvest 2. So we've literally doubled the amount of food supply, which is going to, really increase the population. And then you also have innovations in agriculture itself, not just the crops, but actually how you are harvesting them. So for example, the chinampas, or the floating gardens in Mesoamerica. With more people comes cities, right? There's more opportunities in cities. This is true today, right? So this was true then, it's true now. So people move to cities, there's more opportunities. You have new cities like Venice, Calcutta, Baghdad, and you have old cities that have fallen, like Athens, Rome, Chang'an. Those 3 cities are not as important in this time period. Okay, so actually, the Little Ice Age really Okay, so basically in these cities, because you have so many people living close to each other, you also have more disease that will spread in the city. You do still have a lot of invasions, right? Especially like when you think about like in Europe, it's very decentralized. There's a lot of these like tribal invasions that happen because, you know, you've got these defensive walls. You have, you know, there's wealth in there. I want it. That's sort of the idea. By the end of this time period, you do have the Little Ice Age, which is a massive sweep of climate change that happens and really affects agriculture because it gets colder. So whereas, you know, before then, in some places, you would have been able to produce a lot of food, afterwards, you wouldn't because I can't, right? The climate is not supporting of this. So that's going to lead to some population decline. Some fun new social changes. And by fun, I don't mean actually always fun. All right. So there are some movements to free the peasants by the end of this time period. You know, you've got feudalism, you have peasantry, you have a lower class. There starts to be some like movements around freeing that lower class, not tying people to land. You've got things like guilds where people kind of work together in a cluster to innovate rather than kind of separately. Coerced labor and military obligations are not fun social changes. Coerced labor is where you have people being forced to work. So, you know, different aspects of slavery, of, you know, tying people to the work that they're doing and forcing them to continue. This is going to get a lot more heightened in time period 4 with like the Columbian Exchange and the Atlantic slave trade. So we'll talk about coerced labor more in time period 4, but it really is a big part of this time period as well. Some religious revolts to know about. You have the White Lotus or the Red Turban Revolt in China. This is sort of the end of the Mongol rule, where it kind of becomes the Ming Dynasty because of this revolt. Religions will continue to spread. You know, we talked about this with trade. You know, because you have a spread of religion, you also get an effect in gender relations, in literacy, in family structure. So like with literacy in Buddhism, you have these like nunneries, for example, where unlike in other places in the world, you have women who are allowed to learn how to read. And so the nunneries themselves were very much like centers of learning. All right, so you guys got the slides, so I don't feel like I'm going too fast. But this is the Hagia Sophia. This is in modern day Istanbul, past tense, Constantinople. Used to be a church, a Christian church, then it became a mosque. It's massive. It's like in person. This is actually one I have been to. In person is it looks so big, and it's like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in person. I had to put it in order. This is what the mosaic like architecture looks like in Spain, in places where there was Islamic influence. All those little like tiles, also super beautiful. And this is in Cambodia. This is Angkor Wat. I think Notre Dame in France. And that's it. All right, let me close out of that. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through the questions and answer ones that are, I know, I just put a bunch of GIFs in there just for fun. All right, so question time. Do you have any recommendations with how to do 50-minute time limit for the multiple choice questions? Yeah, so look, the thing is that this is a timed exam. You've got to practice times as a skill. You know, being able to answer questions quickly is a skill in and of itself. So it's not a lot. You know, you've got 1 minute per question. So what I would do if I were you is not just practice like a whole exam, but practice multiple choice questions and put timers on for yourself to move faster. I would also recommend, you know, yeah. I mean, look, so definitely go back and look at what Dylan did before. He just did a whole session on multiple choice in particular. But to kind of like quickly sum up, I would say look at, look at the like sourcing of the document and just like the title, like what is this document? And then just read the questions. Like don't read the document first, just look at the title and like who wrote it and where, just to get some context, and then look at the questions. And then once you see the questions, some every once in a while there's a question that you absolutely have to look at the document, but a lot of times the questions can be answered without the document. So I would just look at the questions first and then look at the document to see what do I actually need to know. Because sometimes you spend a lot of time understanding the document, but you didn't need to do all that. So all right, I'm just going to delete this one and this one. Do you get to see the old tests? Are they released somewhere? You can see all of the old essay prompts on College Board. If someone could just find the link for, does anyone have that link? Let's see, I can just find it for you. World, just Google that. And then you've got, here we go, past exam questions. Okay, so this is a link on College Board publishes all the past essay questions. The multiple choice questions are not released. So, those you'd have to, you'd have to use practice. They have like one practice exam that's released, and then they also have some other, there's just like prep books and stuff, but you can't necessarily, see the past exams. Nisa, Dylan is a student who got a 5 last year, and he did a whole live review at 8 p.m. at 7 p.m. about multiple choice questions. Ibn Battuta, yes, West Africa. Well, he was like in West Africa. I think he's from the Islamic empires. What does Zhang He do? Zhang He is a Chinese explorer. They all kind of do the same thing. They go out into the world, into different parts of the world, and they document their travels. And so, like, again, these ones you could go really in depth in, but you just don't need to. I would say, just know them as examples of travelers that kind of connect the world zones, but it's not necessarily like a specific thing that'll be asked. Dylan's next live session will be in January. Right now we're looking at one a month, but it might be a little bit more. But you can still see his live session, the replay. Crowdcast.io/thinkfiveable. All right. Is there a link where we can find the slides? Yep, there it is. Thank you for posting it there. Where can I find the reviews for each of the kingdoms/empires for China or Mongols or Rome? So if you're logged into Fiveable, then you should be able to see on the left-hand side, all of the reviews are uploaded there. So you can see them once you are live.fiveable.me. You can see them once you're logged in there. And there, I did one, at this point, there's like 10 for AP World. So you can see all of those that we've done already. I also have all the ones that I did last year up there as well. So there's tons of videos that you can look at. What was Justinian and Caesaropapism? So Justinian is the Byzantine emperor, like the most important one to know. He's the one that codifies the laws. And so that's what makes him super important. Just sort of like has a lot of, Constantine is like another important person, but Constantine is still in early Rome and is important for his impact on Christianity. Justinian is important for his impact on like Roman culture, right? Like the only reason why we're like connected is partially because of that. because he's codified it. Caesaropapism means like of Caesar and the Pope, so like church and state, right? Where you have the two kind of working together, and rather than divided. The 100 Years' War is okay. The 100 Years' War is not in this time period and is a very small part of AP World. It's more important for AP Euro because their exam is much more about depth rather than breadth. So 100 Years' War is later. And yes, Justinian did build the Hagia Sophia. How did the other Mongol Khanates fall? The Khanate of the Great Khan and the Il Khanate dissolved because of money problems and internal issues. But what about the Golden Horde and the Chagatai? Are they even important? Catching me off guard. So, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head how the Golden Horde Khanate fell, to be honest. So that one is like Russia. So I don't know exactly what happens by the end. The Il Khanate, that one is the one that's sort of overtaken by the Mamluks out of Egypt. And then, in China, you have the Yuan dynasty that falls after the rebellion, and the Ming dynasty comes to power. Princes of Moscow pushed them out. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot about the big picture of AP World. Off the top of my head right now, I don't know about the specific about the Golden Horde. I think that it's a good example of details that are really specific and are good evidence points, but aren't going to be something that you're tested on specifically. Which is why, if I don't know it, then it's not going to be totally on the exam. That's kind of how it. Will we ever be given a picture of an important landmark in the multiple choice and asked to identify it? No, not directly. So you could be given an image of architecture, and you might be asked that image might show an example of how religion affects architecture, of how religion affects politics, or of spread of religion, right? You might see a picture that shows Buddhist influence and Hindu influence together, and Christian influence together, something like that you could be asked. That would be more about, it's more about analyzing what this picture shows rather than just where it is. However, with that said, if you kind of are able to identify the top landmarks and kind of where they are, that's super important. And so it will just help make things easier for you. The Red Turban Revolt is the White Lotus one. It's how the Yuan dynasty falls, the Mongols in China, and then become the Ming dynasty. It sort of pieces those two together. So it's different than the Yellow Turban Uprising, which is in earlier China in the Han dynasty. This is a later one. Where can we find practice exams? So it kind of varies. You can use sites like Albert.io for practice exams. You also can use something like Romulus, the Romulus app. They have an app for AP World that has just quick questions. They are just kind of trivia based. They're quick multiple choice questions that aren't stimulus based. And that one does cost, I think, $3, but I think could be worth it for an app that will help you. And then other than that, I mean, you're looking at a prep book, you're looking at, other things that cost money. So in terms of cheapest of practice questions, that would be it. But those questions are not exactly the same format that you'll see on the exam. They're more practice things quickly. Do you have any tips for writing SAQs? I find it really difficult to get good SAQ scores. Yeah, and in January, I'm going to do some like SAQ specific sessions. Like we're definitely going to talk a lot about short answer questions and really going through the essays. So the thing about the short answer questions, just like really quick, you know, it really does mean short. You can answer it in basically 3 sentences or less. Think of it as like use the ACE structure. So ACE meaning A, answer the question. I'm typing this into the chat for you. Actually, I'm going to type it into the comments on here. Okay, so A means answer the question. So like if the question says, you know, how did Rome fall? It's not going to say something that straight up, but you know, what would explain one way that Rome fell. So you'd answer it. Rome fell because of outside invasions. Then cite an example. Oh my God. C would be, you know, for example, the Germanic tribes invaded Rome. And then C, and then E would be explain. So, you know, because these invasions came in, the like, you know, defensive walls weren't able to withhold them, and they ultimately fell because of that like outside pressure. That would get you that point. So we'll talk a lot more about SAQs and LEQs and DDQs in January. This fall has been really focused on content. So it's just how we decided to do it. All right, my friends. So we're 20 minutes over. I want to give mad props to all of you that have stuck around for this long. You know, spending this much time practicing and talking about AP World History is not something that you have to do. It's not required. It's not mandatory, but you know, you're here, you're doing it. Let me ask you guys a question. For those of you that are here, tonight I did something I don't usually do. I sent an email about 20 minutes before the live session went up. Was that helpful for you? Do you want me to continue to do that? Send an email 20 minutes right before, remind you, now you jump in. Okay, because before that, I've been sending them in the morning. Maybe just sending them in the morning is a complete waste of time. So maybe instead of the morning, I'll send them right before. All right. That I can definitely do. I mean, or I can do both. I don't know. Do you prefer having both? Did you like see the one in the morning and think like, oh yeah, that's happening tonight. And then you saw it right before and you're like, oh, it's right now. Okay, both. Okay. Yeah, I can keep I'll keep doing that. I'll keep sending an email about 20 minutes before. Yeah, I know. It's tough. Eventually we'll have an app, trivia app, and you guys will be able to get push notifications when we're live. But for now, it's all about the emails. All right, my friends, get on the Kahoot game. That Kahoot game is going to be limited to 500 players. So, you know, make sure you guys get there early next week. It's going to be Monday at 9 p.m. So it's a little bit later than we usually are. But get your friends to join, spread the word. I'm also doing Kahoot games for 9 other AP subjects. And so if you just go to fiveable.me/Kahoot, you can sign up for any of the AP reviews that we have. The Fiveable trivia app will be launched later this semester in hopefully March. And I'm super excited about it because we'll have like daily trivia games that you can play. So kind of like HQ trivia, but for AP. Kind of like Kahoot, but it'll be a Fiveable version of it because Kahoot, like, you know, we like playing Kahoot. We like doing the live games together, but Kahoot was not designed to sustain like that many people playing. But the Fiveable app will be. So stay tuned. All right, I'm out. Thanks for staying. Thanks for sticking around. Good luck on your test this week. If there's anything else that I can help you with, feel free to shoot me an email and ask me any questions you've got. Thank you. Talk to you guys later. Bye.